Hey guys, Philaros here. Alright, so the preseason 13 changes just came out, and there are some pretty meaty changes to the jungle. I'm not going to go over all of them today, as I'm sure we're going to get more information and more visuals on these later down the line, but there is one change that I do want to cover briefly, and just give my thoughts on, because it's pretty massive. All right, so here we see that they're adding leashing range indicators, which is a very welcome change, right? You can now see when you've reached the edge of the patience range of a camp, and it's going to start ticking down its patience. But this line here, we're also decreasing the distance camps can be pulled, so no more having to stand on the perfect pixel in order to hyper-optimize your jungle clears. As many of you might have guessed, this means that they are completely removing double camping from the game. That's going to have very mixed, people are going to have very mixed opinions on this naturally. I'm actually okay with it. I don't like it, but I'm okay with it. I can understand why they're going in this direction, because jungle has been fairly unfriendly to beginners for a while now, really. Now, I thought the double camp removal would kind of be the extent of it, but actually what they've done is they've completely changed the leash ranges on the camps. What we're taking a look at here is a video from Big Bad Bear, so all credits to Big Bad Bear for this video, where he kind of goes over some of the changes from the preseason. And he has visuals attached that display some of what's going on here, right? The avatar smites, etc. Keep in mind that I think this is a leak, so these may be changed by the time they come out in actual Season 13, right? So take this with a grain of salt. I'm hoping some of this gets changed, but let's take a look here. All right, I'll skip past this. You guys can take a look at this if you want to. All right, here we go. We got recommended jungle routes. I think this is fine, right? This is what I'm concerned about. No more double camp farming, okay. But look at this patience range. Look at this. It's so small. It's not just lack of double camp, it's not even close anymore. I would have understood it if it kind of came to here and it came to here and it just didn't meet anymore, so you couldn't double camp. That would make sense to me, right? It's kind of, again, people have mixed opinions on this. I'm actually okay with it, but this is so small. I think that this starts to get into the territory where the consequences extend beyond just, oh my god, I can't double camp, right? Just off the top of my head, what do range champions do now? If you're trying to kite on champions like, say, Kindred, for example, where do you go to avoid taking damage? Ranged champions typically have way less base armor and less sustain early on, so they kind of have to kite the camps out as compensation, right? That's how they stay healthy. But there's no more room to kite anymore. So where do they go? Right? You take one step, you're already at your maximum attack range, and now you have to kind of cross back through the camp. So that's going to be an interesting thing to balance. I think invades are going to be really scary now, because if we kind of extend these leash ranges to all of the different camps, and it looks like there's a little bit of a difference per camp. This blue range looks bigger than the Gromp range. But if we kind of extend it, then I would assume the leash ranges are going to look something like this. Right? Roughly. This is problematic to me because, sure, double camping is gone and that sucks, whatever, but what happens if you get invaded? What happens if the enemy mid laner's playing Talon, LeBlanc, whatever it is, right? Gets prio, pushes up level 2, and just comes to invade you on your Raptors? Where do you go? Because previously, you could kind of dip into the Raptor bush to provide yourself some safety, right? Pull it down closer to your tower, out of vision. Now you're kind of going to be stuck in the pit and there's nowhere to go. You're just a sitting duck there. Or what happens if you want to kind of defend yourself from a red invade? Typically, you had the option of kiting this camp out in this direction and kind of doing it right here. So you could at least see around the bend and see them coming a little bit earlier. Now, again, you're kind of stuck in the pit, right? If you're getting invaded on wolves, you could typically kind of pull towards mid lane. Provide yourself some safety, but again, you're stuck in the pit. If you were doing blue and you thought you might get invaded from here, you would often pull down in this direction, right? So you could see them coming from either path and then instantly try to drop aggro, something like that. So these new ranges are kind of problematic to me. Other problems that I can kind of think of are, I think that double camping and the original leash ranges were kind of like useful balance levers, in the sense that you have this dichotomy between farm junglers and gank junglers, right? Where farm junglers typically farm a lot faster, you could do things like double camp, you could pull camps very far, and you would have full clear timers somewhere in the range of, say, 315, 310, 315, right? And the gank junglers would have timers that were more like, say, 310 for a 5 camp rather than a full clear. All full clears are going to be dramatically slower now. You can't double camp and you can't pull camps as far, so you're going to lose, say, 2-3 seconds between each camp. So all full clear timers are on average going to drop by, say, 10-15 seconds. They're not going to be pre-scuttle anymore. By that point, they've kind of been collapsed with the clear timers on kind of like the single target gank junglers. And I'm sure you guys can see the problems with that, right? If these champions clear at the same speed, why would you play a farm jungler? It doesn't make sense anymore. In order to kind of compensate for that, Riot would have to add percent damage buffs to jungle monsters for these champions. Let's say a champion like Fiddlesticks or Zac, right? Kind of the archetypal double campers. They're going to be way slower by this because of this. You can't double camp here, here, here. You can't double camp these camps anymore. As Fiddlesticks, he's going to lose like 30-40 seconds off his clear. So what would Riot have to do? They'd have to add percent damage buffs to Fiddlesticks versus jungle monsters, right? To kind of balance for this. Now, that's not very elegant, but if they're willing to do this on a champion by champion basis to make sure the AoE junglers don't fall far behind, then it is what it is. But that also has secondary consequences. If Fiddlesticks now has massive percent damage buffs versus jungle camps, what happens on the rotations where you're not actually double camping? Let's say second rotation where there's no blue and there's no red, right? And you're just doing the camps individually. Or you're doing a Baron, or you're invading, and these are just single camp takes. If you've now inflated the percent damage to monsters on Fiddlesticks, he's going to do these rotations much, much faster. So you guys can kind of see how the problems start to snowball. I think that having double camping in the game, while not ideal, it was a useful balance lever that Riot's now going to have to kind of adjust for, and I don't know how successfully they're going to be able to do that. Especially, again, not just when it comes to champs like Fiddle and Zac, but just all full clear junglers will be much slower now. So what are they going to do? You can't really have champions like Evelynn full clearing at 330, 340. It doesn't make sense with their design and their champion identity. So I'm curious what Riot's going to do to actually fix this. I'm not going to like doom and gloom this and say there's no way they can actually balance it, but I'm going to be on the edge of my seat waiting to see what they come up with to fix this problem. Beyond that, just enjoyability. Maybe this is just me because I've been jungling for so long, I've been clearing for so long. I enjoy this aspect of the game that I can pull a camp to here, or I can pull a camp to here, and that I'm not stuck just like hitting this and completely AFK here, trading autos with the camp. Right? But with these new leash ranges, there's really not much room to kite. You kind of pull it over, it takes 2 seconds to pull it here, and then you're just stuck there. I can't say I enjoy that. And I think that a lot of junglers would agree. Now, to be fair, this is directed at beginners, right? So that this is easier for beginners, and I can understand that. But I just cannot help but feel like if you were really trying to make this role more beginner-friendly, there were so many different routes you could have taken that were not so intrusive to jungle as a whole. Just as an example, right? If this role is so difficult for beginners, why are we gating Smite behind being level 9, being level 12, something like that? Why not just make a jungle tutorial and gate Smite behind doing the tutorial? It doesn't, you can help beginners out without having to change the role this drastically. That's just one example. Other things you could have done, you could have removed double camping without making the leash ranges this small and this punishing, right? They could still be a little bit larger. Or if you wanted to make it so that more champions are viable in the jungle pool, you could do something like raise the HP of all of the jungle monsters, but as compensation, you would raise the amount of damage that the jungle items deal. That way, more like a larger percent of your damage would come from your jungle item as opposed to your jungle champion. And this would kind of collapse the clear speed differentials between the top junglers and kind of the off-meta junglers. You could lower the attack ranges on some of the camps that are more difficult to kite. So for example, Red Buff, Gromp, right? Big Raptor. These are typically the camps that people struggle to kite, not Blue Buff. Everybody can kite Blue Buff. But for example, Red Buff has like a really obnoxiously long attack range. It's very difficult to kite it out, and people get in this kind of kite cycle where they walk back and forth, but the Red Buff just doesn't follow them. It just slaps them, right? You could just make its attack range or whatever it is that makes it more difficult to kite than blue buff. Just make it consistent with blue buff so people can kite the red buff out easier. And that would make it more beginner friendly. If your goal was to make jungle more beginner friendly by reducing the frustration inherent in it, I think that targeting things like toxicity, in-game toxicity that's directed at junglers because it's a role with such high responsibilities is one way to go about it. Attacking the damage dealt to you by early invades is another way to go about it. From a laner perspective, you have towers defending you early. So you don't just get like randomly 3-4 man invaded and there's just like, or like dove and there's nothing you can really do about it at level 1, level 2. But with jungle, it's different. You're one player in a 10-person game, and sometimes it feels like when the whole enemy team is coordinating an invade on you, there's nothing you can do. If your team isn't here to help you, you're just kind of at the mercy of the game, and you just have to kind of fuck off and go somewhere else, and there's no tower that can help you out. This feels miserable. It feels completely miserable at all levels of play. So, like, you could, for example, provide junglers with, on their jungle item, you could maybe give them a free ward. This is a stupid idea, right? Just give them a free ward in the first 30 to 40 seconds of the game, so that if your teammates are AFK, you can at least guard 2 entrances. Sort of. Right? Something like that. You can put your jungle pet down there and it can wait there and guard an entrance for you. I don't know. Right? It wouldn't be exactly like that, but I'm hoping you guys get the point. It would just be by reducing the frustration points for newer and honestly more experienced junglers too. I think that's another way you could go about increasing the popularity of this role. At the end of the day, it is what it is. I can appreciate Riot's goals. I think they have their heart in the right place. Speaking as a player rather than as a content creator, I just hope the game goes in a good direction. And I feel like with the changes that are being proposed, I would love to see some small adjustments to it. I think it would be great if the leash range changes could be kind of pulled back a little bit. Have them, you can still take out double camp, but just have them be a little bit larger so that there aren't these unintended consequences when it comes to invades and things like that. As well as if some of these other ideas could be considered, because I think they could help increase the popularity of the role in a healthier way without as many consequences. You can feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But for now, feel free to subscribe, like, whatever, and have a great day.